Simon Bridges, welcome.
Well, it's so good to be with you. I feel like I feel very privileged. I listened to the Martin Henderson one you did a little while ago, and you just started by gushing about him and how handsome he was and how there'd never been a bad photo. So if you could just say a few of those things about me as well, I'd love that.
I cannot lie.
dirty
No,
bastard.
but I am a fan of yours. Like I met you for the first time. I think this is when you were leader of the National Party, and it was just happened to be in the bathroom at Spark Arena the night of the music.
Golly,
a mutual friend of ours, Morgan, introduced us, and I thought he's a really nice guy, Simon Bridges.
Thank you.
And it reminded me of a quote from Michelle Obama. I'm probably going to cock this one up, but she said something like, "People are always harder to dislike up close."
Yes. So you dislike me? Dislike me for a minute? No. I think that's right, and that's certainly true of politicians. I mean, we were just talking about it off air. You know, it's quite polarizing, right? Because you have to put your view out there. And, you know, in any given day, if your view is X, there'll be 50% who have a view of Y, right? So that's always going to be challenging. I think I remember those, the VA Awards, is that what they're called? Or whatever.
VMAs.
VMA.
Yeah.
I remember being at those. They take particular courage because any kind of entertainment event, if you're a centre-right politician, you know like 73% of them frickin' hate you, right? And they're going to come up to you and have you on and, you know, about your policy on this or that. It's amazing how political kind of the creative sectors are. So I went in with trepidation and my
stamp-proof vest.
Yes, and my fears were not misplaced. You get, you know, there's some who are like you who are actually very friendly and take you as you are, and there's some who just want to hate you. That's no lie. I remember it.
Well, you're a brave man going into that room. Hey, first of all, how are you? Yeah, you've recently had a scooter accident.
Oh, well, that hasn't been ideal. So I'll show you. I mean, obviously, there's a big scar there on my left wrist, and it wasn't ideal. Basically,
what happened? This was a daytime accident, so no alcohol involved or anything.
No, which is a scurrilous accusation that many people have leveled as if they know me or something. No, it was very earnest. I was going between meetings, and in my defence, you know, so I'm 47. So, you know, a reasonably middle-aged kind of a guy. But there's only three ways to get around our city in Auckland. You walk, and then you got hot and sweaty and you're late. You Uber or you scooter, right? So I was scootering between meetings. My cardinal sin was it was Kaiba past Simon Street. I had a bunch of papers in one hand, so I was kind of trying to freestyle with one hand and the other with the papers, and then I hit this dip, which to be fair, I've gone back and looked at. It wasn't much of a dip, and I flew, man. But God, I feel really lucky. Like I fucked this wrist, right? Like it was a jigsaw puzzle by the end, and the surgeon and so on were pretty impressed by what I've done. But actually, I hit my face. If you can see on its this side, that dark patch there is But I feel deeply fortunate that I didn't get any form of brain injury. I was probably a bit concussed, but you know, I still know I'm in a room with you and your name's Dom, and you know, but truthfully, like a lot of people are having scooter accidents, and the surgeon was saying a lot of what I had, but a lot of head stuff as well. So like I don't want to say I feel like it happened for a reason, but it did literally and metaphorically shake me up and make me think, I'm glad I'm alive. I'm not that I wasn't not glad, but I'm glad I've got kids. I'm glad I had a wife who still talks to me, you know, and some of these things, you know, I'm fundamentally healthy. You know, I have some money in my pocket. So I feel like, I don't want to be too, but I feel like it sort of happened for a reason, and it's been really good for me. But my wrist is still poked, so every morning and evening I do these kind of uncomfortable exercises.
Rehab.
Yeah.
And did you, because you did an Instagram post from hospital, and you mentioned the family or the couple that came to your aid. Did you ever track them down?
No, I mean, they were lovely. And I was like, because when I hit the concrete, I had a little sleep, right? And then I sort of woke up.
You were just out cold.
Like, whether it was out cold or I was just like, but I knew I couldn't get up. and then I just sort of, my eyes shut, and and then when I sort of came to, I mean, I don't think I was out long. This wonderful Pacifica family, I mean, I think Samoan family were there, and they were helping me. They called the ambulance, which never came, by the way. But anyway, so at the end, I had to ring my wife, and I was like, "You're going to be really angry with me, having me telling me not to go on these scooters." But I was poked, right? Like and then I wandered into the kind of the business building near us. And I got blood all over there probably. So for what as I lied down. And I just couldn't get back. But they waited with me. I mean, they're amazing. Just like angels or something, right? Just there to help me. I don't know what I would have done without them. But I tried to get at the time in my half kind of delirious state. I was trying to get their phone number, but they weren't having a bar of it. But they stayed for it was probably half an hour. And the older man was, his wife and his daughter. And the old man sort of had his arm around me. And it makes me sort of emotional. I haven't thought about it actually much, just how kind they were, and I suppose the question is, would we be that kind? I like to think I would, but I'd probably be sitting there, it's been 15 minutes, I've got to go to a meeting, truthfully, like I hate to say that, but I feel like, but they just had all the time in the world for it, and in the end my wife came, she was angry and apoplectic, and she did take me to the A&E at the city hospital, so yeah, they were absolute angels.
Yeah, that is fantastic, hey? That is cool. Because I was about to say I think most people would do exactly the same thing if you saw someone in distress.
I think so.
But the reality is, it's like, you'd be looking at your watch.
I would do it. Like, in my defence, having said that, I recall when we went for a walk around not too far from actually with the scooter accident happened at the Domain one day, and a guy an elderly Indian man had slipped on the sort of cobblestones or something and cut up his face quite badly, right? And he was asking us where the hospital was, right? And we thought, bugger this, we've got to take him, right? So we got him in the car and took him into the A&E and so on and looked after him. And so actually I know I've passed the tested level, right, when it's happened.
Yeah.
And in a busy world, I think we've got to make sure we do pass that little life test. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I'm glad you're okay. Are you scooter shy now? Or will you still go on scooters? Because I know I read an article a couple of years ago when you first moved to Auckland.
Totally on
you're
scooters.
A big fan.
No, I was spending a lot of money a week on these scooters, right? You think I'm joking? Like a shitload of money. Because my office is up one end of Simon Street. I'm constantly having to be down to Commercial Bay to meet with corporates and all these sort of things. And it's like, how do you get down there? It's whatever it is, 20 minutes walk. It's like 6 minutes scooter. So I was using them a lot. The honest truth is yesterday, which I haven't before, but my wrist is starting to get a bit better. I've got a bit of flexibility. Yesterday I walked past a beam because it was a beam. Sorry, beam. Not your fault, my fault. It was the middle-aged dickhead on it, not the scooter. But I saw it and I thought, shit, I'd be a lot quicker if I just got on this right now. And then I saw an image of my wife, and I was like, no, I'm not getting on. I promised her I won't do it again, right?
I was more scared of Natalie than the scooter.
Oh, I actually think that's true. And the other thing is, like, and I'm ashamed to say this, and I didn't say it, like the mainstream media were after me and at the time, and I wouldn't do interviews because I know I'd get pilloried for this, and rightly so, but like I wasn't wearing a helmet, and I'm not going to wear a helmet because you're all right with your short trim, but I've got lengthy hair at the moment. I don't want to get helmet here. So look, on the basis of that, I'm not going back on one.
Yeah. Oh, fair enough. By the way, since you brought it up, what is happening with you here? What is it? Is this like a midlife crisis?
No, because I've had about 7 of those, right? So it's just messing with people, right? I just love trolling. The fact that it's basically a form of trolling. I think it actually is because I basically, so in my, I've got some responsible jobs in my life, and I love the fact that, tonight I've got the AGM of the Auckland Business Chamber, right? I love the fact that like 47%, that's a statistical true fact, by the way, 47% of those people at AGM will be like, what the heck is he doing with his hair, right? I love that. I love that, like, half are like, let him be free to have his hair, and then there's this other half who are like, maybe it's a throwback from politics where you needed people talking about you. I kind of like that in my own, like not out there in the real world, but in my own little circles, it definitely creates a controversy. And I like that.
It's a talking point.
It's a talking point. I am getting a haircut at the end of this month, by the way. It's just that, we're at a cost of living crisis. I go to an expensive hairdresser. You don't want to do it too often.
Yeah, but the money you're saving on scooters at the moment, though.
Correct.
Hey, congratulations, by the way. At the time we're recording this, you've just got a new job. Chairperson of the NZTA.
Yes.
Waikato.
Yes.
So have you started this job, or?
Well, funny you should say. I mean, all these people who are out there think this is some sort of fancy sinecure. It's real hard work, right? So much of the weekend was taken up with going through the papers for our first board meeting, and so it's, I don't know that I would say it's going to be like massively enjoyable, but it is an amazing challenge. This is an outfit that I was going to say spends, but a better word is invests like several $billion for you and me every year. It controls the state highway network. It has big influence on what local government does around their local roads and the potholes that we've been hearing about and all that stuff. So, that I'm a sucker for punishment. I like to be busy and have something that's significant. And so this is one big thing like that where, hopefully, and I know this all gets a bit grand and probably makes me sound like a wanker, but hopefully we I'll look back on that and be able to say, we over that 6-year period, whatever it is, we did some amazing things. We got on with some infrastructure that meant that people could get around. Dom could get to his mate's place quicker and safer and all of those things. So I'm very early, but I'm.
You want to make a difference.
I want to make a difference, as cheesy as that sounds, and that's always been there, and that's something that makes me, drives me. I'm not someone who, and I might admire people who can. I don't switch off easy. I need stuff going on. Otherwise, I'd probably have to think about life and family. I'm joking. So I like to keep my brain distracted, and this is one heck of a distraction.
Yeah, you say you're kidding, but I feel like that was I've reflected, because I did breakfast radio for like 30 years. And it was a very, very busy job. And I feel like on reflection, I kept myself as busy as possible so I didn't have to face my own demons in a way.
Yeah, I think that's
just me.
No, I think I do try. I think hopefully all of that is true. Like, if we're being really honest about it, I think hopefully though, like, I do try. So, we're recording this reasonably early in the morning. I've already been up for a few hours, and I do try to. I'm a morning guy. I do try to have a bit of a period of, whether some people would call it meditation, some people call it prayer, some people call it whatever. But I try and have a period at the start of a day. Hopefully my children haven't woken up, and where I can be still and maybe think, and not grand thoughts, but just maybe be grateful about what's. So hopefully I'm getting better at that with my long shaggy hair that's polarizing and my broken wrist and like 15 places and so on. Yeah.
The next step is going to be like beads.
I would.
Like a dude that's been to Bali for a surfing trip.
I would, except you'd have something more to just completely take the piss off. But maybe I need them to cover that wrist scar. But I totally would. Like, I don't know if my kids and I have just been watching, like, he's another polarizing figure in Britain, like, but Jeremy Clarkson, the car dude, and after Top Gear, he's got whatever his one is called. And
Clarkson's Farm, it's great.
And Clarkson Farm is amazing. But he's got like 19 man beads going on. It's like, kind of works for an older guy. Yeah. So, if you see me rocking the beads once in a while.
Yeah. Hey, let's just go back to that morning routine. So, yeah, we are recording this at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, and I fully respect that. I know you're a busy guy, so it's early for me, but I love that. But I wanted to ask you, more about your morning routine. So, are you a cold shower guy or anything?
I would be, but I'm probably not. I'm probably not. I was going to say manly, but that's old-fashioned. Manly enough for that. I like the idea of those ice buckets. Yeah, ice baths, I had, but ice baths, I should say. Like, I feel like, because I get a bit of the restless leg in the night, and so I'm taking the magnesium pills for that. I feel like that should be a Mike Hosking ad. Dial 0800 magnesia. But I I don't remember if it was off air or on air, but we were talking maybe off air about psychologists and stuff. I've never been to psychologists, and kudos to those who do and, get help from it. But I have a little bit over my, I suppose, life, probably more funnily enough, post-Parliament. I needed it in Parliament, but post-Parliament had, the odd business coach or kind of people and a great one that, I've done a bit with, she talks about how we kind of really only have 2 or 3 intense hours of power, right, a day. We think we're amazing for like 12 hours and we can do all of these things and so on. You don't. And for me, I try and have that in the morning, so hopefully that's not just doing what I do for the rest of the day, which is replying to 109 emails or, it's something that's focused and sort of and maybe this word means different, maybe a bit spiritual, so there's that, getting up. Sometimes it's I don't want to sound like a hero, like I need my sleep, and I think most people do, but I don't go to bed too late. It might be 5 some days, sometimes if I've got a lot on, it might be earlier, sometimes a bit later, it can be 6. Get up. I've got a comfy little kind of to call it a library would be, way too grand, but like little book area with a nice comfy chair that's got all these phallic fruit on it that Natalie must have bought somewhere in a market or something. And I'll sit in that. I might read a bit, I might think a bit. I'll have a coffee. And then, eventually one of the kids will wake up early and put on a television and annoy me, or an iPad or something, and then more of them, and then Natalie will turn up. But so that's nothing too exciting. But I think routines are good, aren't they? Like
the best.
Yeah, I think
absolutely the best.
I think, and it may be for men even more than women, but maybe all of us. I think routines are, and I think while I'm on a roll, we live in a world where everyone's about multitasking. I just think one simple thing, like reading a poem from somewhere, or a book you're reading about something that's got no instrumental value to you, that's really good for your soul.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, because you are religious, eh? So it's you're practicing of gratitude or whatever. Is it sort of like a religious thing, or?
I think so. I mean, I think religion's got a dirty sort of name these days. I think we live in such a material world, physical world, right? And I think in New Zealand but for me, look, I am a practicing Christian. My church attendance isn't amazing at the moment, but it does matter for me. I mean, it's my father was a clergyman, and so I think it's always sort of there, right? And I know some have had bad experiences with that, and for some people it's it's something entirely different, and I get that. But I think in politics, and actually my business life now, what you learn is we Kiwis, we're a particularly secular lot, but we've got a lot of people, whether it's from India or China or other parts of Asia and so on, they come in with a lot of spiritualism, and I think we miss a bit of that in our society. And and like even this conversation, right? I'm conscious there'll be people listening right now. Fuck that, turn the thing off, right? Because even the word they're not sort of into. But I think that's a poor sort of sign actually of society. I think. For some people, I say it might just be you don't want the connotations. Maybe it's meditation. Maybe it's your yoga or whatever. But I do think those things where it's gratitude, a sense of some purpose higher than yourself, more than just yourself. I think that is important. But can I just put a disclaimer on this, because man, some people are saying this guy, does he think he's Mahatma Gandhi or something? Right? I am not. Right? Like I get shit wrong every single day in the most catastrophic ways, right? So I just want to put that disclaimer on things.
Oh, no, but we all do. That's part of the human experience, isn't it? Fucking up time and time again. Yeah.
Totally.
Let's talk about the early years. So what I know about you is you were head boy at school.
Yes.
You played the drums. You're a drummer.
Yes.
What about earlier than that? Any sort of cultural links? You are the first Māori leader of a main political party.
Yeah.
But I feel like you were sort of disattached from your Māori culture.
Oh, I think
just the way you were raised.
I think my story is a very common one, right? At some levels, we all think we're special, but Māori dad, white blonde mum off a dairy farm, father's family, pretty dysfunctional. Mum's much more sort of functional. And on the Maori side of things, grew up in West Auckland, look, my father, because he grew up in Hamilton, his mother, was straight off of marae, but, he learnt very, clearly, in fact, from his mother, you don't want anything to do with this Maori stuff. You're never going to get anywhere with that. Don't even, you want to try and in any way you can be a white Maori, if I could put it that way. I mean, I'm just, I'm not saying this right or wrong. Well, it's probably wrong, but how it was, yeah, right? And so we grew up with no sense of that. Look, and I think something that's quite fascinating for me today is I've come to terms with all that. And I think I have a much greater sense of my whakapapa and some of these things. But don't get me wrong, tomorrow I'll have to do a mihi whakatau, walking into NZTA. Look, that will be somewhat uncomfortable for me, right? Because I don't speak te reo and, it's not a natural position for me. But I think something I've come to terms with, particularly as leader of the National Party, I had to come to terms with, is I'd always fundamentally just thought, I'm a white guy, right? I'm a white guy.
Maori.
This is,
that's how you're raised.
There's some Maori guys over there. They're good guys, in my class, but that's not me. I had to come to terms with the fact that, in truth, a lot of people, my skin is not light. There's a bunch of things about me. A lot of people perceive me as Maori, right? And so, I am a Maori. Or I think we started.
Whereas Willie Jackson would say you're a crap Maori.
I'm a crap, exactly. What is a plastic tiki Maori? Which so it's taken me a long time to, and it was really only as leader of the National Party that there was that spotlight, like everyone's on you, right? Because you're the alternative prime minister, and it's just the variety of views, right? Too Maori, not Maori enough. I think I sense some racism. In truth, I think New Zealand's from all sides, right? This is still a we like to think we're all great, but this is still a vexed thing in New Zealand, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of judgment, and I'm guessing I don't know. I'm probably projecting here, but did it come with some sort of like guilt and shame? Like this is just the way you were raised, but it's like, you feel like you should know more, even though that was not your experience. And
you've got the situation where, as I say, a lot of, and indeed you get in the media, it's like, kind of almost like too Maori. And then on the other side of, as say you're on a marae and you do a bit of that, and it's not your comfortable space because you've never been brought up with it, and as you say, it's that sort of plastic Maori, or your hope is you're not good at that, but it's just like kind of, and in the end, whakapapa is whakapapa. It's there. It's Ngāti Mini Poto. It's quite. But and the other thing that's complicated is we're all at a level mongrels. I mean, Willie Jackson as I am, right? I mean, you look at my father as Maori, Jewish, a bit of, I don't know what it is, some form of British. Which we do know because they did the spit test and it went off to Ireland. It comes quite amazing when you sort of see.
Oh yeah, Ancestry.com.
Yeah, it's quite amazing.
And we've all got a bit of Viking in us.
Correct. And then Mum has got a bit of Viking, but fundamentally a bog standard sort of 3 veg English, So it's kind of, that's New Zealand, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
What are you?
Well, I did the ancestry thing. I can't remember. There's a bit of Irish in there, a bit of like 5% Viking.
Yeah,
we're all mutts, as you said.
I could see you like in Vikings, like movie or something, or running it. No, because you're trim and muscular. I could see you with your shirt off and some ancient tattoos and some axe or something, and they'd be saying helmets, attack.
Actually, speaking of that, I'll throw that back on you because. Somehow there is actually footage of you like running around shirtless like a Viking. You were on Xena or Young Hercules.
Yes, because basically,
how did you end up? There was the
I just needed the money,
Ryan Gosling show.
Yeah, no, because what happened was because but before Ryan, I was because I'm sadly a bit old, but I grew up in West Auckland. They were doing it. It was back in the heyday of Hercules, the young Hercules was it, and Xena Warrior Princess, and they were filming those out deep west, Kumea or wherever it was, and I lived out there. I needed money, right? I mean, it's just like we never had any money, right? I just think my kids need to like learn a bit of this, and get the experience of it. So I freaking needed money, and I was working. But then these were in the terrible old National Party days of interest on student loans, no allowance because my father earned like 46 grand, not 45 grand. And so, I was working bars, Food Town. Anyone who's old enough will remember Food Town, which is now whatever it is. And then I got myself on some list as an extra. And what would basically happen is you'd rock, and it was maybe it's where the early morning start. It was like 4 a.m. or something. You had to get yourself out to Rosebank Road, West Auckland. They'd put you on a van, and there'd be a bunch of young punks. And I always got cast as, because I've got great crossover appeal, of course. I've got Cliff Curtis. I was always cast as like an Asian warrior or a Polynesian, background scene or something. And back in those days, I don't get me wrong, it's never been amazing, but I could at some level take off my shirt. We wouldn't be trying that these days. So I remember running through the field with bombs going off and horses. I can't remember if that was, I think that was Xena. And then the other one I remember was young Hercules, where we were doing sort of staff fighting in like a coliseum or something around the main characters who were doing whatever they were doing. Kevin Szabo.
Oh, yeah. He was Hercules.
I feel like I might be making up the Kevin Szabo, but there were dudes, but it was that sort of era. And did I do any others? I might have done a little bit more, and they paid well. And the other thing I loved was they'd have a big frickin' table with food and
the catering truck,
perk coffee and stuff, which I don't think back in sort of 1997 we'd ever seen before in West Auckland. It's amazing.
Yeah. And so have your parents or have you got it on a VHS or a DVD?
No,
is it anywhere?
No, I think Junos have tried to find it. So for all you know, this could be complete lies. But it is true. I mean, it's not a good enough story for me to make it up, right? It's not like me sort of dating Elle Macpherson or something back in 96 or something. So no, it is true, but I don't know that there is. Well, there will be footage by definition, but you'd have to watch like 1,000 series of Xena.
Find a frame in the background.
Correct, which is still playing in Germany, I think there's a Xena channel or something.
And then, so why law school? What attracted you to law?
Honest answer. So I had an older brother who was a lawyer, Timothy, and and he'd sort of and he'd done well because he got into Russell McVeigh, which was the big best firm at that time. And my father was, deeply conflicted guy. He wasn't sure whether he was about God or money. And he was really into the idea of us being successful. I think because he came from nothing and he was sitting there as a poor clergyman earning about $9 a year, with 6 kids. And so he was very ambitious for us. He saw my older brother Timothy doing well in law. He had a fancy job, and I think by that stage he was in the UK at a big firm. And so he just really wanted me to be a lawyer, and he fundamentally pressured / bullied me into doing law. I'm glad I did. I think if I hadn't, I would have. I definitely would have gone to university. I mean, I was pretty academic, and I would have done politics. I did do a BA in politics as well as my law degrees, but I probably would have kept going and done a PhD in Marxism or something and be a left-wing sort of lecturer at Auckland University or AUT or something these days, right? So the law was good because it's a real vocation. I was good at it. I got better at time, and so I'm actually glad my dad bullied me in quotes into law, and it did suit my disposition, right? At school I was a nerd who was into debating and argument, and I was always into politics, which was not a family thing. That was just a weird Simonism that was sort of there, and so law suited that in a way. And no, I enjoyed, I was practiced for 8 years, 7-8 years. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and it was very successful. So you went to the UK to do some extra study. Is that where you met Natalie?
Yeah, I met Natalie, and I always tell the stories. It's a bit sort of hackneyed, but it's it's a goodie. So she was young. A Pommy girl, actually Welsh Polish, but and from the Midlands, and she was there at our college. These things are like in Harry Potter style colleges, and they've got the big quad in the middle, and there was a cubby hole sort of set of areas, and we walked in and we kind of brushed past each other. It was all very kind of, and we were in the middle common room, which is like where you if you're doing a master's, right? She was doing a master's in English literature and I was doing a master's in law, and true story. She sort of said, we then went out for Singapore noodles or something a week or two after that. But she then said, so she went home and rang her mum and said, you won't believe it, I've met the man in my dreams. By the way, I was thinner and younger back then, okay? She said, he's this really handsome Japanese guy.
Oh,
so there you go.
Did you feel the same way? Like, was it an instance of attraction?
Yeah, I think it was, because I think, and the other thing was in our middle common room, like, they were quite boozy. You sort of, like, Friday nights, I mean, people, it's a caricature, right? You literally get dressed up in, I think they call it sub-fusk, but it's a tux, right? You have to wear a tux to these things, and it's really subsidised by the college. You slap down like 5 pounds, and it's kind of all you can eat and drink all night, right? And it's courses, and you're finishing with fruit platters and sherries, and it's outstanding, right? And by the end, you're trolleyed, and you wake up on Saturday morning with a hangover, and you're at long tables and all this. So we're there at this group. And she and I were the only, if you want to put it this way, kind of English as a first language, kind of Anglos, right? Or sort of, because everyone else was from Italy and Greece and Brazil and, Russia, and it was a real United Nations. So I think we were kind of forced together because we were the only two. I can remember one of the Greek guys, great guy, like he's probably a High Court judge or something in Greece right now, doing incredibly well. He's a genius, very urbane and sophisticated. But after a few drinks, I remember once I made a joke about his mother, right? Like, I don't know his mother, right? It was just a joke, and like everything changed, right? And I thought, I'm about to die here. Like, and all the kind of people from that culture remain, Whereas Natalie and I were the only ones who were not from that kind of world. So we were kind of forced together, peas in a pod. We started going out, and I knew it's cheesy. It sounds. I knew within like a fortnight we were going to be together. I just felt like that was the thing, but it was pressured because I had a year of this master's degree. And then I was coming back to the UK, New Zealand, I should say, because I was bonded to my law firm. They'd given me a shitload of money to help with this incredibly expensive year out in UK on a high pound at that point in time. So I had to go back. So I was kind of like, well, you're either coming with me, love, or you're not. But we got to make a decision really soon, because if you're not, there's no point wasting another 9 months on this. So I was pretty hardcore, and but so we got serious very quickly. Yeah,
out of necessity.
Yeah, I don't know. I suppose. And then she was back at Mount Maunganui, where I was a young criminal lawyer, and it was they were good years.
Yes. So you were a Crown prosecutor in Tauranga for a while. Were you ever a defence lawyer?
I did a couple of defence cases as a young commercial lawyer in Auckland. Where effectively Rich Daddy had a son in trouble. I mean, I don't know what the freak I was doing back then. That was before I'd been a prosecutor. But I can remember one guy had done like 160 Ks up Parnell Rise, young punk, whose dad was really wealthy. I did what they call a plea and mitigation for him at the sentencing. I remember sort of mumbling something about him being a good kid from a good family, he won't do it again. I think he got a massive fine or something. I can remember other EBA, excess breath alcohol. So I think I did a couple of things in defence, but fundamentally, all my law career was Crown prosecution work. So that's the police do the less serious stuff, and the Crown prosecutors come in for anything that can go to jury trial. So I was a jury trial lawyer effectively for 6.5, 7 years, and I worked really hard, but it was very satisfying work. Serious stuff, the real, rape, murder, serious fraud, a lot of drugs. Not me personally. This is the trials, you understand. Did you end up with any sort of like PTSD or anything? Yeah,
I
did.
You must see some grim things. Like I'm
totally.
thinking of the photograph evidence books that you were privy to, and the judge and the jury.
I can remember. I mean, I won't describe them because it's but I can remember some really heinous stuff, and I think I feel bad now looking back. I probably would have handed it more, but as a really young guy, and probably you're not allowed to do this, but I would show them to Natalie and practice my openings and closings and cross examinations on her. Right at a theme of the podcast at 4 a.m. or something before I did it at sort of 10 a.m. that day, and like in a funny sort of way, more trauma from law than politics. As much as politics has got its, and don't get me wrong, there's a bit of trauma from politics too, but like I think what happened at the end of that, because I was a young guy, the end of my legal career, I remember when I got out, because I'd become the candidate for Tauranga and I was going to try and go to Parliament and take that leap of faith, really. Like, it was a weight off my shoulders, right? Because I was doing jury trials. I was like a workhorse for this law firm I was in. I was doing every day I was in a jury trial, right? And the next one would start the next day and I'd be preparing all night. But I wanted that because I wanted to get the experience, right? And, many jury trials. What happens is you become very cynical, very dark if you're not careful, and you start thinking everyone's a freaking criminal. So you go to the supermarket and you see some guy picking up some big bottles of water or something, right? Oh, he's about to do a big cook of methamphetamine,
Wow.
or you see you become very...
Do you see the worst in people?
You absolutely see the worst in people, because I became... my specialty, if you like, my last sort of, let's say, 3 or 4 years were and again, I treat it sensitively. I know for some people it's even talking about it at general levels disturbing, sexual cases, right? And there's big problems in society, and just seeing those things around young people and so on, you have to cope in some way. And I was probably a bit young and a bit and I was ambitious, and I wanted to, I didn't realise at the time it was affecting me, but when I stopped and the weight came off my shoulders, I realised how much actually I was in I don't want to say a dark place, that's too dramatic, but it would definitely, I was more cynical, dark, and everyone I met was like, I'd be looking at you saying, oh yeah, that guy, he's, that's what you become if you're not careful.
And how do you do a job like that and not take your work home? Like say you're dealing with someone and they get found not guilty, and they're guilty.
Yeah.
Then how do you deal with the complainant?
Well, I didn't. I did take it home. I think that was a problem, and and that's always been, an issue for me. I probably wear these things too passionately and on my sleeve. So, that was a real, and what it meant as well in the criminal law, but if you're a prosecutor, it's different. If you're defence, you have an obligation to try and get your guy or girl off, and force the Crown to really prove it properly. But if you're a Crown prosecutor, you're meant to be what they call a Minister of Justice, and quite dispassionate. You're not meant to be overly zealous in trying to get the prosecution. It's the old thing, it's better to have sort of 10 guilty men go free than 1 innocent convicted.
Yeah, I think there was a quote from the famous Greek king.
Yeah, that's right. And so that's the thinking. But I would go pretty hard, right? I got myself in trouble a time or two in the Court of Appeal, right, for being overly zealous, for pushing too hard. But that was my way. I probably did, if I'm fair, I probably did start thinking, oh, they're all guilty. Which is a bit of a trick, right? They're not all. I think what's true in our system is they tend to all be factually guilty of something. If you know what I mean, like, but actually, the Crown's obligation is to prove that charge on that day in relation to that person. And just because someone's a bad guy doesn't mean they have committed that crime beyond reasonable doubt. So, yeah, it is. Look, I think now I'm finally in a place where I still like to be busy, but I'm finally in a place where I'm not working weekends. I'm enjoying it. As a generalisation, I did this last weekend because I've got my first board meeting this week. But as a generalisation,
you got good balance.
Smelling the flowers, much more balanced. Now that wouldn't be balanced, I think, in probably a normal person's world, but in my world, it's more balanced than it's been in a very long time.
So, did you always have those political aspirations? Was that always a plan for a young Simon? Were you like, I'm going to do law for a few years, then?
Yeah, it was. I think it was. I mean, weirdo as that makes me, I think. Well, I sort of explain. Some people are deeply, you take a, not that I'm remotely comparing myself to say, but, you take a Peter Burling, he's into yachting, you would have got behind the mic and went, people have their different, I was attracted, I was a reader, I mean, I had, brothers who were more sporty than me, perhaps into other things, but quite young. Actually, my auntie who lived in America, she bought us a kids series of books on US presidents. I mean, it was slightly better than it sounds, and they were and I would read those, and I don't know, it was just like a spark there, right? I was like, this is about the world and what makes it go round, and I could see that politics really mattered. So I was a real anorak. I got into it very young. As I say, very, very young, I joined the National Party. There was no history of that in my family. I tell the story, like I don't even know if it's true anymore, but I've told it so many times, it kind of must be that it was Food Town, actually shouted to North. I saw these guys putting up a sign, I think for the 93 election, or pre sort of stuff that. I saw them doing that, and I'd been thinking about that, I want to be part of the National Party, right? And so I sort of went up to them, and then sucker for punishment, I ended up delivering all of the guys' leaflets probably for the next election.
You were young, like 17,
young,
18.
16. You know, and so no, I did get into it. But I think it was that debating, it was that ideas, the same things I liked about law, prosecuting a case, if you like. And so... yeah, it's and I got no regrets. It's a brutal life, and I would not remotely lightly go back to it. But what politics always is very interesting. There's never a dull moment. And what I do miss today is there's a lot I love about not being in it. But the adrenaline is addictive.
Yeah, the rush of it.
The rush. I mean, if you are always, if I was there in government right now, you're always in demand, and that becomes very addictive. Your phone is always going, whereas now I might have one text message waiting, if that. I know if I was still a senior politician, I'd have like 200. They are just always, and that's every bit. Not that I've ever taken methamphetamine, but that's every bit like an illicit drug. I imagine.
Yeah. Is that what someone like Winston Peters, who's old now, but he's still vital and still vibrant and still doing it? Do you think that's it? He's just had like a lifetime of this high cortisol level, this sort of rush of being important or being busy or being in demand.
I think there's something in that, and I wouldn't dismiss that. I'm not so sort of. I don't kind of wouldn't make that entirely negative, right? Because it is about a life that's. But and I think a guy like him, I think what's also true is. For all the stories about Winston, we won't get into them because I'll get myself in trouble and politicise this. But I think for all what is also true is this is a guy who I think has a very good diet.
Does he?
Yeah, actually. And
doesn't he love he still smokes his ciggies, doesn't he?
No comment. But look, he the fish and the salads and so on. So I think, I wouldn't overplay it. In comparison, let me just, I'm trying to be diplomatic here, but let me say this. If we look at the US presidential race, where you got a couple of older gentlemen, one of whom, the stories are has got his, acuity issues. I'm pointing to my head.
Oh, Biden.
Yeah, Winston's not actually in that category. This is a guy who's still very much with it and at the, near the top of his game.
Yeah. Well, there's a comedian I really like, and he made a joke about Biden. He said, Biden could be the first president we have that could be assassinated by a punch to the gut. But they're about the same age, right? Biden and Trump. They're similar age. And Trump seems so much more vibrant and so much more lively.
Correct. I mean, you've got to hand it. Whatever you think about Trump, and I know there'll be people who have a lot of thoughts about him, and, on a bad day, he scares me too. And his positions on sort of Russia and some of these things. But you're right. I think he's 78. I mean, good grief. He's actually, for a guy who supposedly eats a lot of McDonald's and Coca-Cola, but I don't think drinks. Maybe he does. I don't know. He's pretty vibrant. You're right. The way he gets up and gives those speeches and... and he looks like I would be fascinated to meet because he looks like a big guy.
A giant, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you get into politics, you get into the National Party, and then there's this weekly TV interview thing with you and Jacinda Arden, and you're called the Young Guns or whatever.
Yeah.
So you're just you're young, attractive, just sort of, I suppose, bringing a bit of vibrancy into a fairly dull sort of environment. What are your recollections of that time?
Oh, definitely. I had 2 lucky breaks. If you want to, I mean, you make your own luck at a level, and you know, but a couple of things that went very well for me early on in my career. The first was beating Winston. Actually, even just talked about him in Tauranga, and it was, that was a phase thing. He was caught up in a bunch of issues, and I was able to just, as a young guy, glide past him. Tauranga was ready for change, but we were in a good campaign, and won well. That was great because there was huge spotlight on that campaign and that election. On the television and so on. And then the other one was getting Young Guns. I think John Key put me forward for that. And remember, it's so different than today, and not to be entirely mean about our TV, but we were talking about it off here, as we talk about this, News Hub's about to be gone, TVNZ's got its very real issues. This was still the heyday, it was Paul Henry, at its absolute height. Everyone watched this show, right? It was unbelievable. It's like now if you were on, say, TVNZ Breakfast, a lot of people wouldn't even necessarily kind of know. Or
so fragmented.
But everyone was watching this thing. And so there you had, I think you're right. Dare I say it, people can make the judgment about who was more attractive, but probably not me. But you had me and Jacinda, and every week, and we took it seriously, man. Like she would sledge me before we went on air, and we got on very well, right? We had a lot of fun, and Paul Henry brought the best out of us. He's a very clever, fun interview who loved politics. I mean, he himself was a National Party candidate, back in the ether. So it was heyday stuff. It really made me, and it got me good. Like it's the old 1,000 hours or whatever. I mean, some people say, well, you're never good, mate. But like every week, prime time, difficult topics, had to be on brief. I knew if I got a word or two wrong, John Key would ring me and tell me off, Not that he sort of did that, but you know what I mean? Like it was, we were conveying and I wasn't there for myself, I was obviously trying to build my own brand, but I was also there for the National Party, which was in government, to kind of make sure we were dominating the Labour Party and we were putting forward the best positions for us in it. So that was like my big thing, but because it went well, if it had gone badly, it would have been differently, but because it went well, I was very fortunate. Like I became a minister quickly. I then became a cabinet minister, and don't get me wrong, I worked my ring off, but I scaled to the top, or close to the top. By the end of that time in government, I think I was number 4 or 5 in government. So that was a, and I remember when I was going to go in, I thought, shit, if I just become a select committee chair, which is lower down the scale, that'd be pretty cool, Member of Parliament, select committee. In the end, I did much better than that. So I feel very fortunate. You
didn't have I sort of imagine you being like a head boy at school, having aspirations to one day being Prime Minister.
Look, I think you get that after a time, right? But I think, I suppose I'm a funny mix, aren't we all? Of confident and not confident, and I think that's
you have moments,
some of that's it's a Māori thing as well, it's a bit bashful, or be careful.
You're supposed to be humble, aren't you?
Yeah, no, I know that wouldn't be a lot of people's perception of me necessarily, but but no, I feel very grateful at the career trajectory in those early years. Lucky breaks, some hard work as well, and it went very well.
Yeah, that's interesting. Interesting little insight before that line about John Key, how he'd watch you on TV and then call you up or whatever, because he was a very, very successful leader, and
totally.
And you were part of his cabinet at a phenomenal time for this party in particular. But did he tell you a new one from time to time? Or
not often. But I think the thing with John is he didn't need to. You knew if he was not particularly pleased. Oh yeah, totally. Look, this is a guy who's a trader, very successful guy, hugely likable guy. I haven't seen a lot of him lately, but actually I saw him last week, and you just can't help. Half an hour with John, you're just love the guy, right? Whatever you thought 5 minutes before, you sort of he's a very personable people person. He is what you see. But you knew when he wasn't happy. That didn't happen often, but I can remember 1 or 2 times, where perhaps I'd got something not quite right, and you knew. Yeah.
Well, was it you knew because
in the eyes? I think it was in the eyes.
Oh, so he didn't. It's not what he said, but what he didn't say.
Yeah, I think it's in the eyes and
What-
just
wow.
the tone.
Oh my God.
Because that wasn't normal, easy-ozy, happy-go-lucky John, right? Of course, he was much more than that. I don't say that dismissively,
Yeah,
but he
You
gave
knew-
that demeanour. So when that wasn't the demeanour, you knew.
So yeah, you knew you fucked up.
Correct.
Oh, there was even So you, when you were doing this young gun stuff, so you were married to Natalie. I think Jacinda was probably single at the time. This is pre-Clark. But there was
Yes.
even rumours that you guys, I
well-
suppose this is your on-screen chemistry, but there were rumours that you guys were seeing each other.
Paul Henry would sort of spruik that, say, the chemistry is electric and all these things. I don't know. But we got on very well. There's a lot I like about Jacinda. Obviously, I disagree with a lot that she would believe, and some of the ways she handled, the last 3 or 4 years of her prime ministership. But as a person, liked her a lot. I admire the way she, actually carried things very lightly in a way I probably didn't or don't. If I've got an issue, I'll stress about it and work too hard on and think about it. I think she came at things at face value quite lightly, and so in some regards, while people have, and I think in my view rightly so, will point to some weaknesses in her leadership style. There's some big strengths, and we got on very well. We did have a laugh, and we were kind of this sort of, in quotes, celebrity couple at the time, albeit not in any real sense. I stress.
Yeah, that's it. Did you ever sort of? It was a crazy turn of events that saw her quickly rise and then become Prime Minister, and a very successful Prime Minister for a time at that.
Yep.
Did you ever foresee that?
I must admit, others did. I didn't. Maybe it's the old familiarity breeds, not contempt, but a kind of a complacency. And I felt she was too, what I've just said, relaxed, if you like. For that kind of grinding prime ministerial role that you've seen from a Helen Clark or a John Key, where it's every aspect of your life, because at what level it has to be. So she was a very different style of politician and prime minister, I think, and of course, first ever, I think, young mum as prime minister, which is a remarkable thing.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about? I've got a list here of some of the low,
So many
greatest hits, and greatest shits.
Yeah.
So there was some. I was just googling you the other day, doing some research, and
how many items are there? There must be like 10 trillion items.
There's a lot. So there's some secret tapes where there's a lady called Maureen Pugh, and you were caught on tape calling her fucking useless.
Yes.
I don't know the backstory about that, but I mainly want to know like what happens afterwards. Like first of all, it's a secret tape, so that's the shit play, shit form. When that comes out, like, do you have to phone Maureen and grovel?
Yeah, something like that. I think, there's so many things. I think,
like, it's awful. Like, we've all talked
firstly,
like
at one level, you can say, we've all said ridiculous things, but we're not all getting secretly taped, right? That's explaining away. I think what's true, though, is, all of that said, here was me on a colleague saying things I shouldn't have, and I deeply regret that. I think, if you take that period, what was amazing to me, and I'm going to be a bit self-serving here, but hey, it's my version of history, so I'm going to. Probably that's like one of the very exceptional ones that I do regret. Fundamentally, in what was a topsy-turvy, very controversial time when the National Party was eating itself and going through deep upheaval, I don't look back with really much regret at all. I feel like at the time, with the facts I had, I acted with integrity and well, and not everyone was seeing that from the outside because it looks like but I believe I exhibited I'm going to say this was not modest in New Zealand terms, but if I was an American, I'd say it. Donald Trump would certainly say, I believe I exhibited great leadership through that period, right? And I kept and actually, we kept momentum, and I kept the National Party in the mid-40s through that period, which, is a remarkable feat. And that was, it was a team, but, we had policy momentum. We were doing a lot of work behind the scenes that at a level set up what has happened, a government now with policy and work. So, I'm philosophical. I kind of say, I think it was, and he's not a politician you'd hear quoted very often, but I think it was Richard Nixon at his impeachment, or when he had resigned from being president after Watergate. But, you kind of don't know the highs if you haven't had the lows, If you haven't had the valleys, the highs aren't as high. So I don't look back with regrets. I kind of embrace all of what happened. It was a roller coaster. And I don't think, if I think about my conduct, it'd be one thing if I thought, you got a bunch of things wrong. But I think if people now look back a bit more sort of soberly, objectively, we, the likes of myself and Paula Bennett and my leadership team, I think we handled things well fundamentally. What's remarkable, and the media was after me every single day for about 2 years, as I held on as long as I did, actually. And really, it was in the end COVID that sort of got me.
Yeah,
not the 15 scandals within the National Party.
Well, the scandals are all fairly minor on the big scheme of things, aren't they? So Winston Peters, you had an interesting relationship with him. There's some clips online that I found where like he mocks you for your Kiwi accent,
totally,
and how you say China. He's like, I don't know where this place China is.
Yeah.
Which is like schoolyard bullying, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think
is that water off a duck's back to you? Was that embarrassing at the time? Are you humiliated?
Look, when I reflect on it, it's a bit like, at the time, no, it's not embarrassing, but I think, you think back and think, I did think the overall, and it wasn't so much Winston, actually, but some of the media aspect on that, I think was a bit classist and possibly racist. I'm going to say that. I do think they would have treated others differently. And the media's a pack, right? And they go through phases. And, if they're not, the Labour Party will have a bit of this going on, the Green Party right now, where the media's recalibrating, they've got a new government, they'll be pretty hard on them, right? And that was the phase they were in with National. So that's sort of that. So, I'd be lying if I said those things don't affect you. In the end, they do. And there were hard days, it's hard to get up, right? But, I did, and we kept we kept moving. But, look, now I'm philosophical. But, yeah, at the time, some of the stuff was hard.
Yeah, like there was a slushy thing as well, like where, so I think the Labour Party under Jacinda Arden, was it Kelvin Davis, the corrections minister? He bought like 100 slushy machines for prison guards to have in the office. And for some reason, like, you saying it was a waste of taxpayers' money, it became like a big meme thing.
Yeah, it did.
Was that because of the way you say slushy?
Well, the irony, I suppose the lesson there is there's a difference between what works in Parliament and what works in social media, right? Parliament has lost a lot of its verve, right? It used to be a rough, tough, rambunctious place, and I like that. But it's not well suited for the clip things up, where things can be taken out of context. What had happened there was, we had the government on the ropes, actually. And I did a 5-minute speech. You get sort of time limits. And then I moved to get another 5 minutes. I got another 5 minutes, which was unexpected. And, I'm yelling slushies. Now, in the heat of the moment, in that parliament, it worked, right? But when you replay it as a meme, like a million times, to young punks who are 17 who've got no freaking idea of what Parliament is, let alone anything else, it doesn't work, right? But, shit happens.
Yeah, I don't know why it was so funny, but it just was. And what about Todd Muller? So he was the leader that... it's very Game of Thrones, isn't it, Parliament? It's not for
It was in that period. I think, what in government it can be quite like a military, you're marching forward, the key sort of English government, it's all, everyone knows their place, it's very hierarchical. What happens, though, after like that 9 years of that is there's like a pressure valve that needs to be let off, and the craziness comes, right? And as you say, Game of Thrones. I mean, it was Game of Thrones without the killing. I'm not aware of any killing, right? So, it just was, right? And so, again, I'm not judgmental. We got to a point, as I say, I'm surprised in a way I didn't get done earlier. But COVID came. I knew at that point I was in a pickle, right? I could either speak out about COVID and kind of go nuts on it and some of the issues there, that wasn't going to go so well, or I could be quiet. But if you go quiet, you lose momentum and you go down in the polls anyway. And I knew there was a number in the polls, if I went under it, in terms of my party's support, they were going to move, right? These guys were on routine, for years, looking for any reason, because, Parliament's a place full of ambitious people, and rightly so. But that time came, I wasn't going to go down without a fight. We put it to vote. The rumour has it, who knows, I lost by 1 vote. That was that. Maybe, who knows, maybe in a life sense, it was all doing me a favour. Because life's pretty good now.
Yeah, everything happens for a reason. But I can't imagine that time would have been very nice. So you were replaced by Todd Marley. He made a very, very good opening speech, I thought. Seemed very prime ministerial.
Yep.
And then how many days did he last?
It's a 50-something.
Yeah.
Because it's tough, right?
Yeah.
It's all that stuff. And that's why I say, pat on the back to me. I was going through that for years, right?
Yeah.
At that period, very, very hard. And you say it's tough. Look, it was, but the tougher bits when you're in it, actually, it's a bit like that when I told you I got out of criminal law to go into politics. That moment when you're no longer leader of a party that's got a lot of division at that time and issues, the weight comes off your back again. Life is good. As long as internally within yourself, you're not sitting there thinking, I've done these things wrong. And I genuinely, maybe it's what I just have to tell myself, but I think personally, genuinely, I didn't, I don't sit there with a lot of regret that I got things wrong, as I've already said. So actually, it was a hard day. I had to go out and give a kind of a eat humble pie speech, and and the irony of these things is as the media always do, because they're out to get you every single. Once they've got you, they're your friend again, right? And they're like, if only he'd given that speech when he was leader. It's like, well, I did, but you guys never covered it. Yeah, that's the way it goes.
They're like a pack of vultures. Yeah. They're scavengers that want blood.
But the next day, life is good, right? And felt very, very, very good. A plea would be to those out there who actually don't follow the stuff that closely, because I think those who do have a bit more of an understanding. Don't go up to David Seymour or Winston Peters or Nicola Willis or Chris Hipkins or James Shaw, Marama Davidson, and swear at them and tell them what assholes they are. Look, you don't really know. They're all there trying to do their thing, and you'll have a snippet of something, and so those ones would get me. You sit down on a plane and some guy's in your face abusing you for an hour. It's actually just like, oh, totally. And it's just kind of like, so. For all of the people think, that politician's a hot head, or that, being a good politician at a senior level requires a lot of self-control.
That's quite astonishing. That's astonishing to me. 'Cause people are always nice in person. Like there's that phrase, keyboard warriors. But there does seem to be a thing with politicians where it's like
a free pass.
It's fair game.
That's right.
Which it shouldn't be.
But hey, look, all of this sounds. It was a great ride.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of privilege that comes being in politics, and you get to meet amazing people, do some really interesting things. So yeah.
What about Christopher Luxon? You worked with him for a while.
Yeah.
What did you make of him?
I look, he's a very personable, good guy, and I think what's going to happen with this government, it's I've got to be a bit careful, because now I'm a public servant at a level in the CCTA chair role, and I think the code means I have to sound like I could work comfortably with either part of the Parliament and all of that, and that's all true, by the way. I have a regard for Chris Hipkins and some of his colleagues, but I think he's a good guy, Chris Luxon. I think he's doing a good job, and I think it's a new government. It's going to pick up momentum. I think that's inevitably what happens with governments. What happened with the Ardern government, the Key government, the Clark government, and what happened with this one too.
And what about So the gay marriage vote, you
Yeah.
voted against that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You look was that like because of your religious beliefs, or you look back now and
I
think
think- I
actually
think
I'd
that
vote differently now? Or?
I would vote differently now because so you get hung up on these ridiculous things that don't matter, or they do matter, but you kind of technical arguments about them don't matter. So I'm clear I would change that now. I mean, I think in the end, it wasn't out of some sort of some would cast it bigotry or silly business like that. I had my technical reasons why I thought, I thought we were in a better place at that time, not to support that law. But in the end, I was wrong. I was missing a big picture. It was all trees without the forest, and that is sort of that, yeah.
Is it quite liberating for you to admit that, or is it quite hard? Does it feel like eating some humble pie?
It doesn't feel like humble pie. I think the issue with these, social issues like that is they become very binary, right? Well, he voted that way, he must be a homophobe, and have a position on the LGBT community, So this is the. I think that's and people then they'll typecast you, right? Well, that guy's just a religious nut who has that view. I don't think that's fair. In my case, maybe in some people's case, as I say, there was some nuanced technical reasons, but I missed the wood for the trees, and I regret that.
Well, I feel like Luxon had the same sort of thing. Like people were like, he's a fundamentalist Christian, he's going to ban abortion. It was like there's almost this scaremongering and fear tactics in a way. So yeah, what was the COVID stuff? So this is when you were still leader of the National Party. Yeah. You got death threats at the time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can remember.
What did you say or do?
Being notified those. Look, in the end, if you go back and look at the various sort of statements, they were, by today's standard, very moderate, right? I wasn't running the crazy conspiracy theories. I wasn't, we were making, again, quite technical arguments around, in fact, I pushed for the lockdown. It wouldn't have happened as fast as it did if I hadn't pushed Jacinda Arden and her government into it, both privately and publicly, right? But then there was a point where the social costs and the overall costs of the thing were worse than the outcome was trying to get, right? And I was making that case. But I think what I learned then is you can be right too early. The crowd hasn't caught up with you, right?
Yeah.
And actually, if you look at Chris Hipkins right now, he's getting some flack, that he should be saying and jumping around more. Actually, in those early days of opposition, I don't think that's fair at all, right? You're better to sit there and let the government play its role, sort of tactically speaking, let them do that. But that wasn't my style. I was out there, I was pushing for it. And yeah, death threats, look, they're scary. They really, the thing about these things, it's not so much me and how it affects me, it's how it affects your family, right? And admittedly, what happened then is our house at the time in Tauranga, parliamentary service, end up fitting it with more panic alarms, and you've had hot dinners and fences and da-da-da-da. And, my father-in-law, who was with us for lockdown from the UK because he got trapped here, every so often he'd go to turn on the lights down where he was sort of living in a kind of a granny flat type area and press the panic alarm, and there'd be police there in 3 minutes. And it was good to know they came. I'd never seen guys scale a wall so fast, right? But it was scary, and I do think, I think a little bit of a tendency in New Zealand, people say, it's the centre-left politicians who have all this hard stuff happen. Actually, no, I think it happens across the spectrum. And, I'm sure that the Chris Luxon, the David Seymours and so on are living with these things, even though they don't talk about them much or if at all.
How old were your kids at the time? They were a bit
younger than young, right? So they're 12, 10, 6 now. So we're talking, sort of, I don't know, 9, 8, 6, 3 sort of things.
Okay, so how do you explain that to them?
We'd be pretty sheltered,
right?
But what is true, and I'm not so we're talking about my children per se, but I think what is also true, and see, who was I talking to? Someone in public life, who wasn't a politician, sports, actually very significant. I won't say who, sports star. And, again, what would affect me was not what happened to me. I could take the abuse. I got crocodile skin in the end, and the issue becomes you end up being too unsensitive, right, to what people are saying, which sometimes is valid criticism. But it's how it affects your family. Kids go to school, they get bullying at school, right? You know, it only takes 2 in a class, and they're having you on because your dad is blah or your mum is, you know, da. And that's the stuff that really, you know, affects you. How your kids are. When they're too young to understand, they haven't done anything wrong. But I think that happens across various forms of public life.
Yeah, but it shouldn't. And you, what you were saying before that about you having like a crocodile skin, you shouldn't have to.
No,
you know what I mean. It doesn't make it right. We shouldn't be condoning that at all.
No, it's a tricky one, isn't it? It's I always think you got to be careful to when someone's abusing the crap out of you. You know, there'll be something in it where they've got a point potentially, right? And you want to if there is a valid point, you want to sort of hear that.
Yeah. So when you're a leader of the opposition and you're doing tough interviews, like say, like Mike Hosking on ZB or John Campbell had Campbell Live at the time, Jack Tame perhaps on Q&A or Sunday, whatever it is. Do you get nervous before them? How much prep's involved? Do you sit down afterwards and have like a post-analysis or debrief with your team?
I think as a cabinet minister and the opposition leader, I certainly over-prepared. You know, to me it would have been unforgivable to go into that and not technically have an answer around something and be accurate about it. And I think you look back on my record and you say, actually, that guy was strong on that. He never got his facts wrong. He always constructed the argument right. Once I lost the leadership, though, it was a bit more of a whatever kind of a phase of life. In fact, the interviews flow better when you're like that, right? It's, you know, you're a bit less prepared. You're kind of a bit more laissez-faire, kind of who cares sort of thing. And actually what you find is these things aren't necessarily as probing as you, and your demeanour matters as much or more as kind of having all the facts right. So I think by the end I went into these things pretty easy-ozy. They're very different styles. You know, your Jack Tame one is whatever it was, 10 minutes. If it's going badly for you, 15 minutes. You know, they keep it going. You know, look at a level, I very cynically speaking, as a politician, I would look at those things and say, look, actually, the vast preponderance of Kiwis ain't watching this on a Sunday morning. So actually it's all just about style, demeanour. If they want to keep chipping in and interrupting you and, you know, with their questions and trying to cross-examine you like they're Perry Mason, let them finish their thing. Don't talk over them. Let them say whatever they want and then get back to what you want to say, right? So it's, you end up, the Mike Hosking one's more like an orgasm, right? It's like over before you've begun, right? I don't know about you, but, you know, it's like 2 minutes, right? And it's kind of, so that is a very intense commercial radio. So I don't know I was particularly good at that, but you got to know what you're going to say before you're on. Like if you got 3 points you want to get out, because he might go anywhere. Obviously, you know.
You get a briefing though? Like you get a briefing of the theme of the chat or?
Not really. I mean, they look at a level, it'll be like, oh, we're on to talk about crime. Or you're on to talk about, you know, Auckland City issues. You're on to talk about, you know, the tax cuts you're promising. But look, of course, anything can go. And, of course, the reason they get you on may also be something else that you don't want to talk about in addition to that thing, like, you know, a personnel issue you've got or whatever. And then, you know, and then there's everything else in between, you know, your more soft TV ones where it's like being mauled by a cuddly teddy or whatever, and
a pack of Labradors.
Yeah, you know, so they're all a bit different. But I think my general advice to politicians today would be sort of go on with good demeanour. You know your facts, but actually it's more how you appear that people are smelling, aren't they? You know, it's kind of that test. What's it like with the sound off? Are you sitting there smiling? If Jack wants to talk over you, hey, Hakuna Matata, my friend, it's all good.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that, because I've had Ashley Bloomfield on the podcast.
Yes.
And he talked about the Hosking thing. And on Hosking mornings, he said him and his comms team would be up at like 3 a.m. prepping for it. Like he'd be shitting himself and he'd wake up in a sweat those mornings before the alarm went off.
I can imagine.
And then in the lead up to the last election, Winston Peters did a train wreck of an interview with Jack Tame, and there were opinion pieces afterwards saying, "Oh, Winston Peters not fit for Parliament because this." And you're right. No one's watching. No one really cares. Or people that do watch, and then they make up their own
And of course,
mind.
there's different purposes. You know, from Winston Peters' perspective, having an in quotes train wreck interview might be a wonderful thing, right? Because there's a segment of New Zealand who, quite likes that actually. So it's all where it's a bit different if you're a leader of one of the two bigger parties where you're seeking to be. I think you used the word before, more statesmanly around those things.
Did you did you sort of like Winston Peters? Or you like sparring with him?
Oh, totally. Look, I mean, he is a great New Zealand character. Who's done who's done so much. I think. I said to him relatively recently something like, someone needs to write a book about you, Winston. I said, but you might need to be gone so that there's no defamation laws involved. And he said something like, I've been too busy living life, not writing life. But I think whatever your view about Winston Peters, he has been a big singular figure around New Zealand politics now for a very long time, and I think right now, he brings some welcome, significant experience into the government. Everyone will have their view, but that's sort of mine.
Yeah. I agree. Like you see your footage of him with Muldoon in the 70s. Amazing. Like he's like the Forrest Gump of New Zealand politics. He's everywhere through every sort of government over the last 50 odd years. He's been there. It's been a remarkable career, and it's going to be a huge loss when he eventually.
There will have to be a big Winston book sometime. 100%. For New Zealand politics. Look, as I say, they'll have to make sure they've got a good defamation lawyer. But
you'll wait till he dies. It's the only safe time to do it.
Yeah.
There was another clip I found on YouTube of you getting kicked out of Parliament by Trevor Mallon, who's the Speaker of the House.
Yeah.
Is that a moment of shame? Is it like an All Black getting a red card?
I think it's a moment of pride.
Oh, yeah.
By the end, I think it depends who you are, right? There'll be some cats in that Parliament who are like, oh no, I've been kicked out of Parliament. My mother saw this. What am I going to do? I think with my courtroom background, and a bit of a dose of cynicism, it's like there is fundamental. I mean, there is if you really push the luck, you end up getting fined, right? You don't really want that because they can end up sort of docking your pay every week for the rest of your parliamentary term, right? And Natalie wouldn't be real happy with that, right? So you don't want to make sure. So there are, if you really go for the doctor, there can be some quite extreme results, but that hasn't happened in a long time, right? I think Nick Smith nearly got it happening to him, but that hasn't. So by the end of Parliament, right, and some people will be appalled by this, but it is what it is. By the end of Parliament, when I was no longer leader of the opposition, actually, I knew I was going because I'd done my dash, and I think I'd been finance spokesperson and foreign affairs spokesperson. With Trevor, I just had a rule. I'm going to get kicked out once a week, and this was not difficult. I'd just start taking points of order. They'd have no point to them, really. I'd give him the borax, and you knew by about the third time you're doing that, he was going to be like out, and that was cool because then I could go back to my office and watch Netflix or whatever it was I wanted to do.
Did you once you left Parliament? Did it feel? I don't know. How did it feel? Did it feel like there was a big hole in your life?
I reckon what makes a massive difference is how you go. I.e., are you going because you've decided, or you're going because you lost and you weren't re-elected, right? So I think that psychologically makes a massive, I got a bunch of pals who they failed to win their seat or whatever, and they're not back in, and that sort of in quotes haunts them, right? They always want to get back, they want to get back because they've got unfinished business. Now, look, at a level, I could always say I've got a bit of unfinished business. It would have been a privilege to be New Zealand Prime Minister and some of these, but I'd been there, I'd seen it all, I'd been pretty high up, I'd done my time, and I decided to go. And so I think psychologically, knowing you're going on your terms makes a big difference. I think what's also true is knowing that, I had some opportunities, right? If I was sitting here right now and, it hadn't gone too well for me on the outside and I didn't have some meaningful work to do, that could be a real... So, look, I no, it was liberating. It was exciting. You know, as soon as I got out, you know, we were offshore for a little while on a kind of a holiday I had been able to have for quite a long time. I knew I had a job to go to. You know, I didn't have that, but I can see how people do.
Mm. Yeah. What are the perks of being a minister that you miss? Is there anything?
There's only one thing, right? And look, that it's amazing they're not doing it anymore. No, there's two things. I'll give you two. Number one is the Crown car, right? And by the way, you know, yeah, and they're using them less and less, and it's remarkable to me. But I tell you what, if you're a senior minister, you work friggin' hard, and you are always tired, and you may well have been at a function where, you know, you're not getting drunk, don't get me wrong, but, you know, you'll have had a couple of glasses of wine or something. You should not be driving. I mean, I would have been a danger to other road users were I driving those situations. And being in that Crown car, say if you're the Minister of Transport or something, you're out in the regions, checking out what's going on, meeting with mayors and so on. You know, that is an office. You know, you're in the back there, and, you know, I was pretty staunch, right? I think some of them would be chatting to the driver and, you know, listening to you know, one of your many radio shows or something. You know, I was always working, right? I always had 10 phone calls to make. I had papers to read. I was a conscientious guy. So I think that Crown car thing was like a privilege, but it was an essential, right? And I'm telling you now, if I ever win the Powerball and get 45 million, I'm going to get a driver again, right? Because I think that's amazing. And then secondly, the other one that you don't get in opposition, you get this, you know, little room in Parliament, and the Parliament rooms are nice because they've got the wood panelling and so on. But what you get when you're back in the beehive is you do get your own dunny and shower, right? Every minister gets a dunny and shower, and that's you sort of want that, right? You're there long hours. You know, I don't want to be using the communal kind of ablutions, and so there'd be two for you.
Oh, that's good. What perks do you get for life? Is there anything anymore? Do you get domestic flights?
No.
Is that not?
No, there's none of that. There was. I mean, you go back to the 80s and 90s, it was unbelievable. I mean, I think there was, you know, you still have the last of a breed who you know, if they travel internationally, they only pay 10% of the fare. You know,
wow.
you know, but I assure you, in my case, there is zero left. You know, as I sit here to you today, about 2 years on from leaving Parliament, there is no remaining. I think the only thing I could think of is if I went to Parliament, I haven't. I don't think I literally have since I've been out. I could go and sit in the Parliament on the side there, actually in the house, as they call it. I think that's about the only remaining thing I'd sort of have left as a kind of a special treatment. Yeah, but there's no financial thing. All of that, the last of it died out with Key, actually, where he and I suppose the government I was a part of got rid of it.
Yeah, and from a personal, like, mental perspective, how have you been? It seems like you're fairly robust. Because I'm thinking of like Todd Muller, well publicised mental health issues. Golriz Garraman at the moment. I mean, that shoplifting, that's got to be connected to mental health in some way, because it just makes no sense. Yeah. What about you? Fairly robust?
Yes, I think I am a reasonably stoic kind of, you know. I think something about the upbringing, big family, kind of, you know, you get up every day. It doesn't really matter what's going on. You do the job. I think whether I am anymore, I think I've got a bit sort of fat and middle class, but, you know, I mean, I used to pride myself. I mean, I could live on a can of baked beans a day, you know, but I you know, when I went through university, I had no money, you know, I worked a lot of jobs, didn't sleep much, you know, but then I still managed to do well at university, right? So I suppose you're right. I have a perception of myself as a tough, robust guy who just gets on and does the business and doesn't worry too much about the emotions and all that sort of stuff. I think, though, that the slightly more interesting answer is, hey, you know, I can remember on those plane trips, you know, just everything had gone wrong all week. You know, you knew that half your colleagues were trying to do you, and, you know, you hadn't handled X, Y, and Z very well. And, you know, you might be sitting there just quietly by yourself, pretending you're sleeping, but wanting to cry, you know. And so I think anyone in some of the circumstances I found myself in would be in the same sort of situation. So I don't think... but or worse, frankly. But So I don't want to pretend it was perfect, and I don't want to pretend my response to some of the stuff over the years has been perfect. But I think I do feel, again, there's the word we've used, but I do feel grateful that I've never, there's been periods of depression probably, due to the circumstance, but I've never had major mental health problems, which we know, so many today do, and it's so good that we talk about that stuff more than we used to.
Are you quite good at talking about it? Like with Natalie, like would you get home on a Friday afternoon and she's like, "How's your week?" and you're like, "Ugh, don't ask."
I was never good at it.
Yeah,
never. I was terrible.
Got walls?
I'm like, yeah, I think so. And I think the other thing is, hey, because I've got an introvert part of me that's quite big, right? So, and you're out there as a politician, you've just talked to like 1,000 people all frickin' week, and you're just home back in Tauranga, or on Friday afternoon, and you just want to, you don't want to say another word, right? And you've got someone who wants something from you, and it's just like, how was it? Good? Any issues? No. Pass me that bottle, and so, but I tell you what I've learned more recently, and this is just something, and it doesn't come natural to me, but I think I've got a bit better, and I think Natalie would say I've got a bit better, and I've just got this thing, so we will have, come home from work on Wednesday night, maybe we manage to somehow miraculously get rid of the kids upstairs at some point in time, cup of tea. I'll make sure in that, and this is nothing much, right? But I'll make sure in that cup of tea, actually, we're having a really good, meaningful conversation where I'm fully present, fully engaging. She is. We're both, asking and answering, questions in a full, genuine way. And look, most people say, "Oh, you whack job. Is that all you can manage?" But that's progress for me.
No, well,
that's progress because I'm a man.
Yeah,
and men are a certain way.
And you and I are a similar age, and it's just not the New Zealand we were raised in.
Oh.
And it's funny because vulnerability is a massive word now, and we're understanding that the more you can open up and talk about these things, the better off you are from a mental perspective. But like from a parliamentary perspective, it's definitely not there yet. Like if you're Jacinda Arden and you show emotion at the mosque, that's fine. If you're John Key, show emotion at Pike River Mine, that's fine. But if you stand up there and say, "Hey, I'm not doing very well," like a lot of people have been mean to me online, I've had some death threats, and you get emotional, reflecting on your own stuff that's going on, people are going to be like, "This guy's not fit."
I think that's right, and I think it just there's a Kiwi aspect to it all, which I'm not even necessarily saying is entirely wrong, but it's like, oh, that's all a bit indulgent. They're all about themselves. They're talking about themselves, and as a politician, call me old school, but it's kind of like you're there for the people. You're there for others. You're not there to be talking about your own stuff, right? And so there is all of that with that, isn't it? Like I say, heck of a job. I'm glad to be out where I'm living a much more, in quotes, normal life. It's amazing how quickly people don't abuse you on the street anymore. They know you're out. You can go back to a level of anonymity. You know the word I mean.
I'm going to clip that and turn that into a
minute. Slushies. Slushies and anonymity.
God, I should have given you a slushie today.
Yeah, you so should have.
No, it's not a stitch up here. What about crying? Are you much of a crier? When did you last cry?
I think I do cry more than people. Because in a way, like I'm all over the show here in this podcast and you'll say, well, you just said you weren't. Like in a way... maybe we all are. In a way, I'm deeply emotional. Things can make me I'll tell you what made me really emotional recently, and maybe, again, this sort of says what a whack job. He's crying about something external that and a guy he doesn't even know. But I'll tell you what made me cry recently, like really recently as we record this, is Alexei Navalny, the opposition guy in Russia. And just, because I sort of sit there and think, our opposition leader had its hard moments and... and you felt on some days that everyone hated you and that was just on your side and, all of that. You just sit there and think about this guy, and I suppose it goes back to my childhood, and I say that reading I did, and, that politics should be noble and, it matters and so on. There's a guy, who kind of like a bit like, if you're religious Jesus in a way, knew he was going to die for what he was doing, right? I mean, this is not a smart game plan he had, taking on Putin every day and out, mocking the guy, and going at him and sticking up for ordinary Russians. So he ended up, and I can remember thinking about it before he died tragically, but the poisoning, and then he ended up in like the worst Eastern Bloc prison up in the back of where, the treatment,
like a torture camp.
The treatment would have been appalling, and the guy was exactly the same age as me, 47, and if you kind of put it at its mind, he died for his country. I remember the morning that happened, I woke up and saw it. I don't know why, it just triggered something in me, and I cried. So it was a month or two ago, and so. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm capable of, a good movie will make me cry still. Maybe something around my kids, if it's not quite right, or I feel like, it's so I think a lot of guys, I probably do have a closet cry at some level every week or two.
But I do love that. I've had a couple of our peers on the podcast, Adam Perori, the former New Zealand cricketer, and Matthew Ridge. And Ridgie said he cries all the time now. Like he'll be driving in his car on his own, just reflecting on some things that he's like happy about.
But I can see he is and like I see this in me in a different way. He's even more so with that sort of, what is he, Armenian kind of disposition, probably, right? That sort of, but he's, you can see that he is a passionate, emotional guy, right? I probably do a good job of hiding that and becoming more stoical. I think law and then politics kind of teaches you that rational side of the brain some. But I think we've all got a bit of that, and I definitely have, and it comes out a bit. And probably now I'm more free and easy. It comes out more than it used to.
Yeah, you got any regrets?
I don't want to create a headline here, but we've talked about one or two of them in my political career where I've said the wrong thing, and I think but fundamentally I always think it's a bit cheesy when people say I don't do regrets, but I kind of don't. I do think basically I got things right at the right times on the big stuff. I think I've learned over time, I could be a bit clinical, I'm kind of like, well, I've got the outcomes right. I'm trying to do the right thing here for New Zealand, I think I've learned more good leaders. I still consider myself at a level of leader, not on that front line, but, good leaders do have an empathy and an understanding of the people around them. They do have good EQ, they do have emotion. And probably I could have brought a bit more of that to bear. I talked about the interviews. That's just an example of this. I got every answer right, but maybe there was a need for a bit more humanity. Maybe that's true on the gay marriage one, for example, some of these things. So we're all learning, aren't we? And hopefully, I don't know if I'm getting better, because I probably aren't. I'm probably picking up a bunch of new bad habits. But, we're all learning and changing. If you're the same guy you were 20 years ago, well, you're a fuckwit. Actually, we've got to keep moving with and evolving and learning things and being surprised by things. Yeah,
it's funny that, isn't it? You have old friends, and they may want to go out drinking, you don't want to go, and they're like, "Oh, you've changed." And it's like, well, yeah, you haven't. You haven't changed. Who's the winner here? And second half of your life, what's that going to look like?
I just want it to be interesting, stimulating, and I suppose the politician in me, there's still a bit of that. I do, I think people say, "Oh, what are you, what is this about? Are you about? Is it you like the fame, or is it you were power hungry?
It's got to be a bit of ego, doesn't it?
There's a bit, and there's always every politician. Sure. But I think what I do want is some significance, by which I mean, I sense that I'm doing something that matters for more than myself and will leave some form of legacy, so I think, interest, loved ones, family, all of those things, but I think, I still want to I love New Zealand. I still do want to be significant in this country and be contributing, right? Not in politics anymore, but in other fields, whether that's business or through this NZTA role. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. All the not superficial, but all the good stuff you and I both want. I got to look after my health, so I get to 100. I'd like to make 100. Some people want to do it. I want to travel. There's 1,000 places I want to go. with my family and show my kids these amazing places. So, the wrist was a wake up call, but I'm looking forward to the next 47 years.
How good. And you're looking very relaxed.
Life is great. Life is great.
Hey, thanks so much for your time today. I'm so pleased we connected and made this happen. And anyone that's still listening now, 1 hour 34 into it, I hope that you are what they thought you were, or they've got like a different perception of you for the better.
Hey, well, thank you for having me, Dom. Look, the check's in the mail because this counselling session has been outstanding. It's been a hugely positive, beneficial, therapeutic experience for me. But in all serious, so thank you for what you're doing. It's a great podcast, and I know a lot of people get a lot of meaning from it.
I appreciate that. Simon Bridges, thank you.
Cheers.